Last time, I filled in this area with thickened epoxy, as well as some of the voids down here. And then I also tried to fill in a lot of the small holes on the top. There's also a big area up here that got filled in. The thickened epoxy did a great job here with the fillets and with the filling in other big gaps, but I feel like it didn't really do the best job on the small little holes. I'm not really surprised by that. So what I'm going to do today is find more of these big areas, like right here and these areas down here. And I'm going to use the thickened epoxy focus mostly just on repairing those areas. And then I'll come back and probably use unthickened epoxy for the small things, and I'll actually be fiberglassing over that right away. You may remember many episodes ago I had a very long and bent package that I got from the post office. This fishing pole is what was inside. Fortunately, fishing poles are designed to flex, so for the most part it was okay. One part that was less than okay was this bit here. The string guide was bent pretty far, and I bent it back, but now it's a little bit weakened here and separated from the pole. These things are replaceable, and when you replace them, you actually basically just epoxy them onto the pole. Since this one hasn't come off yet, and I'm mixing up epoxy today, before I put it on the boat, I'm also just going to take a little dab and reinforce this thing with epoxy, and that should make it last, I think, a good long time. I did my best to make these patches nice and smooth, but the reality is it's never going to be perfectly smooth. So I'm going to have to come back and sand this. Now this surface is a little bit curved, it's not perfectly flat. And so I don't necessarily just want to use a hard sanding block. I want to use something that can actually conform to the surface and keep that nice curve. There is a sanding tool called a longboard that takes long strips of sandpaper like this, sometimes even significantly longer, and it's flexible and it's used to do that sort of sanding where you want to maintain the curve. It's used a lot in car repair and other things where you're dealing with curved surfaces. You can buy these online for anywhere between $20 and $200, but I don't want to wait for one to arrive, so I'm just going to make one out of some scrap wood that I've got here. So it just happens that the scrap wood is the exact right width for the sandpaper. I need a way for the sandpaper to stick on, and this is what's called hook and loop style. It's basically a little Velcro setup. And these pads here are also some hook and loop stuff, and it turns out that they stick pretty well together. So what I'm going to do is I need to cut this board to the right length, then fasten on this sanding disc that I cut in half to the board, and then I'll have something that can take this. And then I'll also want to put some handles on the other side of the board so I have something to grab onto. I'm now going to show you the safest way to use a table saw. They are very dangerous. The first thing we want to do is make sure that it is unplugged and that the blade is all the way down. The next thing we're going to do is use some clamps to attach our wood to the table itself. Now that our workpiece is firmly attached to the table saw, we're going to use a hand saw to cut it. And that is the safest way to use a table saw to cut your wood. Now that I've cut this wood down to size, it's actually a lot less flexible than I thought it was in my tests. This is actually a really nice piece of wood. I'm going to have to go and hunt for something that's got a little bit more give to it. This one would still be useful though to use with this, and I will still probably complete the project because sometimes what I really do need is a nice solid flat surface. So it's not for waste, but it's also not what I need right now.
So in my garden next to this marking stick here is this thing coming up. Now that's either corn or some sort of weed. Could be grass, could be, I don't know, there's all sorts of stuff I dug up here. So in the comments, let me know, do you think that's corn, or do you think it's something I'm going to have to yank out later?